Good evening. My name is Mark Lewis. I'm the series editor of the One Work books and also an editorial director of Afterall, the publishing project that publishes the One Works and as well as a journal and a couple of other series of books. And we're based here and part of the University of the Arts, London, Central St. Martin's. Thank you all for coming. I'm just going to do a few prefatory remarks about Thomas's work, which is the protocol, I think, and we're very honored to have him here tonight. He just arrived off the Eurostar. It's one of the great things about Central St. Martin's that we have a train station. Many more French-speaking people at the university than there were 2 years ago. Traditional monuments, of which there are many, are, let's say, they're both totalitarian and pathetic at the same time. They're totalitarian because they commemorate often figures of war and power, and they're totalitarian also because they try to suppress history and its dialogical content, that is, its disputes and its precariousness and its contingency, in order to kind of monumentalize, that being the word, a kind of edifice of history of the ruling class and of power and authority. They're pathetic also because that ambition is always a failure. What Laura Mulvey and I once called the disgrace of monuments, disgrace monuments, because as soon as they're up, they begin to disappear. That is, they fail to have long-term register. You often hear people walking down around Trafalgar Square wondering who these people are that are commemorated around there. And this is the natural evanescence of historical monuments. And then, of course, there are also iconoclastic moments when they're torn down during periods of revolution and dispute. 1789 in Paris, 1917 in Moscow, 1989 in Berlin, 1990 in Moscow again. A lot of monuments coming down in Moscow over the years. Thomas Hirschhorn, on the other hand, his extraordinary monuments make sense of these monumental histories that I've just talked by embracing their precarious impossibility. I've written about public art being an impossible art, and I think there's something about that impossibility that Thomas's work embraces. Not only by the use of materials that he uses cannot last, they're precarious to begin with, and not only because in the spirit of dialogical materialism, Hirschhorn, I stole that from a book that I just read. I liked it. It's a Bakhtin Marxist combination. Not sure what it means yet, but I liked it. Hirschhorn's monuments acknowledge the active participation of so-called viewers and spectators, but also because these are monuments to ideas. Think of them, the great works of his, Deleuze, the monument to Deleuze, to Spinoza, to Gramsci, and to Bataille. To ideas, that is, his monuments are to the ideas about the possibility of imagination and discourse, of the revolution, of imagination and discourse, and of the revolutionary potential of ideas that could be kept alive rather than to disappear. That is to say, in active dialogue with readers and viewers. His monuments then are a kind of radical trifecta of history, form, and idea. What I would call the exemplary work, or to quote one of Hirschhorn's thinkers, Bataille, the exemplary job of art, to embody this trifecta. The One Work is a series of books about works of art that we believe live up to this job in Battian terms, that are exemplary in this respect, and that are influential in ways that continue the spirit of their invention elsewhere, which is to say, we can see Thomas's work in the work of others. Anna Dezeuze's excellent text on Hirschhorn's Deleuze Monument teases out, I believe, some of the most radical and exciting aesthetic elements of the artist's work. And I have to say it is one of the better or best book in our series, and there are a lot of very good books in our series, and I do urge you to buy it. I have some sort of bios that I'm supposed to read, but I think I'm going to skip that. Everybody knows who Thomas Hirschhorn is. He doesn't need me to read his latest exhibitions. Anna Dezeuze, we're very fortunate to have, as I say, to write this excellent text. She's a lecturer in art history and theory at the École Supérieure d'Art, a design at Marseille Méditerranée. That's a rather long name for a school. And she's the editor of the Do-It-Yourself Artwork, Participation from Fluxus to New Media, published by Manchester University Press, and co-editor with Julia Kelly of Found Sculpture and Photography from Surrealism to Contemporary Art, published in August 2012. Thomas, I feel now I've neglected you, but by not giving your Documenta, Venice Biennale, plus all these amazing public art projects, particularly the one that Anna's, and he will talk about tonight, but also the amazing project he did in the Bronx last year in New York. I'd like to thank Caroline Woodley, editor of the One Work Series, and Guy Alessi, now sadly departed, managing editor. Oh, I mean, she's left. Sorry. She's alive, but no longer with us. I think it's going to be hard to live that one down. You know, who done amazing work she did amazing work on this series. Okay, Thomas and Anna will talk for about 45 minutes to an hour, and afterwards there will be opportunity for questions. I do hope you'll stick around, and thank you very much, both of you, for coming.
Well, my thanks to the Afterall team, with whom I worked very closely up to now, and it was a pleasure. And my thanks to Thomas for coming over to talk a little bit about the book, and to also answer some of your questions. The book came out of my work on precariousness in contemporary art, which I have been working on now for almost 10 years. But the book is still forthcoming. I do not lose hope of finishing it, and that's the first time I came to interview you, was 10 years ago, in relation to this book project on precariousness in contemporary art. And in a sense, this book was a little detour, but I felt like focusing on a specific work, a specific artist, and the Deleuze Monument seemed like an ideal object to develop my thinking about precariousness, which I started discussing with Thomas, whose writings and work was essential from the beginning in this project on precariousness, and in particular your definition of precariousness as distinct from the ephemeral, which I have found extremely useful. And in a sense, when I pitched the proposal to Afterall, it seemed like a very good idea, because my argument was that the Deleuze Monument was your most precarious work, because it had been dismantled before the end of its exhibition, and this is the reason why I never got to see it, because by the time I went to Avignon, it had been dismantled. So it seemed like a very good idea, but then when Afterall accepted my proposal, I was faced with the question of having to write about a work I had not seen. So that's the first question I have for you, Thomas, is do you mind that I wrote about a work that I hadn't seen?
No, I don't mind, but I measure the struggle you may have as art historian. But it's your struggle. It's not my struggle, because I was there. I made it. So I'm very happy. No, really, I'm very happy that 14 years after the Deleuze Monument, there is this book coming out. And to me, it means that works who are short time public space made works have another chronology, another time to go with. And I'm very happy for this. I'm very happy also for that it comes out in Afterall books with this fantastic idea to have a book about one work. So really, this is for me, first, just to tell you, a very important and very nice, and I'm proud of it, that there is a book, not the first one actually, but the second one coming out about the Deleuze Monument. So I'm not concerned by the fact that you didn't see it personally there, because something very important, for the first time, because the Deleuze Monument, you must know, the first time there was my idea to do a work together with residents. Not in the city center, not where the center is, in Avignon here, where about 8,000 people are living inside a kind of area closed by walls, the old historical center of Avignon, where most of the artworks in this group exhibition, La Beauté, where I took part, were presented. So my first decision when I went to Avignon was to make an artwork outside the walls of the inner center, where actually 3/4 of the people living from Avignon, from the city, 3/4 of the people living outside of the inner city. So, of course, I did know when I do this decision, a lot of people will not come because, you know, in the consumptionary attitude of the arty people, they go where it is, where it happened, in the center, directly in the center. And my work was outside, so I didn't know. I know that there will be a lot of people not coming to the Deleuze Monument. So this was the first moment. So it was very important to me because I never did it before. I'm very happy that I could do this experience because I learned a lot about it. And the first thing I learned was that, of course, when you are outside on the center by your own decision, then, of course, not a lot of people are coming. But still, even when not a lot of people are coming there at this moment, there is another possibility, and Anna, you proved it with this book. There is another memory. There is another time. There is another possibility to engage with it, which has nothing to do with to be there at this moment, but perhaps to ask questions you are interested in precariousness, in failure, or in success, in art in public space, etc., etc. And that's why I'm happy that the book is here today.
Well, you gave me permission in a sense because you had self-published this book of all the documents of the Deleuze Monument. So you took that decision quite almost immediately after the project to publish the book on the Deleuze Monument.
Yeah, can you show the pictures, please? Yes, because after the Deleuze Monument, which it's picture 51, after I made the Deleuze Monument. Thank you. Yeah. So I made myself, and this is the first actually link to precariousness. I made myself a kind of catalog about my own work. Of course, not with a historical or critical output from outside, like you, but with only my own writing. I wanted to do a kind of testimony about what I did, the experience, the difficulty, the complexity, the failure, but also what I learned about the Deleuze Monument. So this was My first action I did after the work, I did a catalog myself, printed in photocopies on blue paper, myself on the Deleuze Monument, with all the materials, with all the issue who happened there. And of course, to me it was very important as an artist to have it as a document, and I'm happy that you, but perhaps also other people, took advantage of it and as a base, to develop after. The question arises with the Deleuze Monument.
Yeah, because I mean it's fascinating read because it's, I mean, there are some passages that are actually document the dramas. I mean, this critic from Switzerland who got attacked and who wrote you a letter and then you wrote him back. So there are some very vivid moments in the history of this monument. And also the fact that you just photocopied the images and they're practically illegible, basically. I thought, well, maybe the way it looked was not so vital if you were ready to publish a book which was mostly about documenting the process and the quarrels and the difficulties and the press reviews. So in a sense, it did give me a permission to write about this work as a story as much as a work. And in a sense, the story of the creation and the problems and the dismantlement, it's something you can only write about afterwards, after it's finished. And I'm guessing you also have had a very different relationship to the work once it was finished and you were able to reflect on the process.
Yes, I mean the Deleuze Monument was my first project I wanted to do where people are living, together with people where they are living. In the outskirts of Avignon, this small city in the south of France. It was my first time I wanted to do a work involving the people, the residents of a they call it HLM, of a city housing project. People who are living there because they have some financial problems. So this was very important to tell me, first, I want to do a monument, not in the city center, not in a space, in an important space of the center, like the park, or in front of the city hall, or I don't know, in a kind of very crowded place, but where people are living. That's what my try was with the Deleuze Monument, to do where just people are living. And people I call before normal, but it's not about normal, it's about non-exclusive. People who are not only interested in art. So this was about the experience of the Deleuze Monument. That's why this was my first project I made with this idea to put a moment, the idea of a moment and a monument towards where people are living. Why the monument is in a city center? Why it is on a place in the city where it's loaded by history? Why it is not just where people are living? That was my idea. That's why in Champfleury-C in Avignon. Why? Because just there people are living there. Some people are living there. That's why. So this is very important to me, and that's why the Deleuze Monument was my first try to do it where people are living, a monument where people are living.
And I'm guessing that it was even more unpredictable than you had expected?
Of course, of course. Can we please show picture number 16? Yes, I mean, because when you do a project like this, where people are living, you have first to find out where the people are living. I mean, the people, not only the 8 or 10% of the city center of Avignon, but also the other people who are a little bit outside. And then, and I wanted to show this picture because I had another idea of a monument, that a monument is not only a sculpture, that a monument is always, like always, a kind of a conglomeration of different things, of information about to whom is dedicated a monument, about really a statue or a sculpture, about something who can touch your heart. For example, a monument, even today in the city center, is perhaps a meeting point for people who they love themselves. They say, okay, meet at Trafalgar Square, whatever. Or a monument can be also a sign in the city center. So to me, it was not only to do it where people are living, in Champfleury-C, in the city outside the walls of Avignon, but it was also the idea to split out the idea of a monument in different parts. And that's why here you see the parts of information, statue. Here you see, this is the statue. This is the statue of Deleuze, the sculpture of Deleuze. But in the back, you see there is the library, the information about who was Gilles Deleuze, what is important in his thinking about Gilles Deleuze. And of course, all these kind of different ways to engage with a monument, I wanted to start to follow. For example, in the Deleuze Monument, there were 4 integrated videos. Here I showed, you see, I showed the absolutely beautiful abécédaire of Gilles Deleuze, Gilles Deleuze, the philosopher, with simple letters A, B, C, until Z, explain philosophy. Until T, and he chose for T, tennis, and he explained what means tennis today, you know? So I thought to show this is it's a way to connect with people. So there was not only the Deleuze abécédaire, but there was another abécédaire made by a social worker, Jeffel Gucci, from the neighborhood, who made his own abécédaire. There was a video, an integrated video of the French poet and writer Manuel Joseph, and another one of the French writer Jean-Charles Massérat, who made a work with the people in the neighborhood. So there were these 4 videos integrated. There was a library where people could really get the information about who were Gilles Deleuze, and there was the other part you could see before in the schema. There was the part of heart, there was a part of altar. This was an altar dedicated to Gilles Deleuze.
You didn't include an altar in your subsequent monuments. Why is that?
I mean, I thought this was the first monument I made in public space together with the residents. So I made before the 4 altars. An altar for Mondrian, for Raymond Carver, for Ingeborg Bachmann, and for Otto Freundlich. There are 4 altars I made, altars in public space. And for the Deleuze Monument, I mean, it was the second one I made, I thought I want to do an integrated, I call it integrated altar in the monument, integrated to him as a beloved person, as a beloved man, as a beloved philosopher, as it is. Because, and I'm very happy that Mark, you pointed out what's about. What's about, Mark? Yes, about to have an idea today, to live with an idea, to live with something we can believe in. We can pay for it. We give something for it. We we are engaged for it. And that's about the Deleuze Monument, the Spinoza Monument, the Bataille Monument, and also the Gramsci Monument. And in general, of course, I hope in art, we do it because we believe in something, believe in these ideas. And that's why I thought in the Deleuze Monument, I could do an altar dedicated to Gilles Deleuze, with very simple objects, you know, like who after Deleuze or Gilles Deleuze, I love you as a man, or a lot of others. So this part of altar, which I always thought is a way to connect with what happened on the street today when somebody is killed because he cycled, you know, with a white cycle here in London, for example, because he cycled and he was touched and dead by a truck. So why not to do it to somebody I love? And here it was Gilles Deleuze.
Yeah, no, I love your altars, and I mean, I was hesitating between proposing a book on one of your altars as well, but I was, and maybe that's one of the reasons I was attracted to the Deleuze Monument, because there was this altar in the heart of the monument, but I noticed that afterwards for Bataille and for Gramsci you didn't have an altar, so I was curious to know how your thinking changed.
No, but that's a very good, I mean, I like this kind of art historical questions because, of course, I tried. I mean, you know, I made 4 monuments, okay? And in each of them, I tried to learn from the errors, from the experience, from what I lived with, and to, in a way, yes, to develop it. And of course, I thought as the Deleuze integrated altar was the first I did, I think for the Bataille Monument or Gramsci Monument after, I don't need again an altar. So, I mean, it was done, it was made, the altar, the integrated altar for Gilles Deleuze. So that's why I didn't feel the necessity to do something else like an altar for the Bataille Monument.
So I spend a lot of time in the book trying to answer the question of what you learned from the Deleuze Monument, obviously. So I have my hypotheses. Did you agree with what I wrote in the book?
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, I'm agreeing and not agreeing, but it's not about agreeing or not agreeing. You know, as an art historian, it's very, very, very simple. You know, actually, you know, it's absolutely about this sign here. So the art historian, he used this sign, you know it. And me, the artist, I use another one, but I don't have it. It's this, you know. It's about affirmation and about the question. For the art historian, it's always the question. For me, it's the affirmation, which is not so far from the question. But okay, coming back, I mean, really, I learned a lot, perhaps the most, or really a lot about the Deleuze Monument. First of all, I learned that it is possible to do a monument not in the central place, not in the historical place, but just where people are living. It is possible. But it needs that you, as the who do it, as the artist, for example, for me, that you are completely committed, you're completely engaged, you're completely present. That's what I learned. I learned also that it is possible to develop another idea of a monument, which is not only just a sculpture, but it's something else, who has his own output. For example, I learned with the Deleuze Monument that the people at Champfleury-See, you know, in Avignon, they told me, Thomas, why there is no bar, or why there is no point to get some food and drinks? I learned it there in Champfleury-See. in Avignon, in the outskirts of Avignon. I learned because the people there, they told me, Thomas, it would be nice that we have a bar or something to have a drink or something to have a tea or whatever. And I learned. And afterwards, all my projects, I try to integrate a bar. Not because it's to drink or to eat, because people are hungry or they have nothing to eat. No, 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 no. But just a point to meet, to discuss. And I learned it, for example, in the Deleuze Monument. Thanks to the neighborhood, thanks to the residents from Champs-Fleurisset who learned it to me. So to me, the Deleuze Monument was really a very important work on the, because I told you in the beginning, my first work I wanted to do with residents, and of course then I understood, when I want to do it with residents, I must be implicated like them, like residents. That means 100% all the time, and all the time be present.
I thought what's interesting for me in the Deleuze Monument, for example, when you compare it to the Spinoza Monument that you did before, is that the works you did in the street, like the altars or the Spinoza, they risk passing unnoticed. So there is this idea of a kind of the indifference of the passerby. Whereas in the Cité Champfleury, you were looking for an encounter, a confrontation, and not indifference. And I was wondering, you talk about, when you talk about the Deleuze Monument, but also other monuments, you say you are looking for intensity, moments of intensity. So how would you define, what's an example of a moment of intensity for you in the encounters?
Can we see the picture 11, please? Okay, yeah, the moments of intensity. Of course, the moments of intensity, they're always happened. But of course, the moments of intensity that I spoke about and you are interested in, they're really changing your, as an artist, your thinking. I just want, but that's why I wanted to show this.
That's the Spinoza.
Yeah, this is the first monument, actually, I did. The first monument I did for Spinoza. Actually, this was not a monument together with residents. It was in a city center first. It was in city center of Amsterdam, called the Red Light District. And it was a monument which was quite small, concentrated, but already it had inside the dimension of, they had books inside, for example, books you could consult, they have informations inside. For example, here the information where I was interested in about pleasure and desire, which are terms where beautifully Spinoza did describe what means pleasure and desire, and I thought it makes sense in the red light district, but also, and this is the picture I want to show, that is actually, there was a small connection. There was a small connection to somebody, actually to a sex shop owner who gave me the electricity, because in the Spinoza Monument there was lights. There was a TV and there was lights on because it was day and night. So this was a very small interaction with somebody. But somebody still, it was there. Somebody was there. I asked the guy from the section, can I have your electricity to do my artwork outside? So this was the first try to go into a kind of other reality than the art, my art concern. So now, of course, the question is how then I worked from this monument, from this experience, how I tried to work it out to something like the Deleuze Monument, which we are interested in. The Deleuze Monument, which I thought must be something who is really not in the city center, but because people don't live in the city center, but also because perhaps in the city center, and that's coming to your question a little bit, people needs to, or wants, or I hope they are confronted with something, perhaps they don't want it, they don't ask for. I bring in, you know, and that's why the step was to go out of the city center and to confront with an idea. Just, it was only my idea to do the Deleuze Monument in Avignon. I mean, nobody, I didn't make a kind of research about people from Champfleury, are you interested in Deleuze? It was my idea, and so this came up, the idea of dedication. It's my idea to make a monument to Deleuze, but not in its center, but outside where people are living. So this came together. The second element, which I think important, the dedication, the element of dedication. It's only me, the artist, who dedicates to Gilles Deleuze a monument.
So what are the moments that you thought worked? At what moment did you feel that you had achieved what you were trying to?
I mean, I never achieved what I tried, first of all. I never achieved, but there were beautiful moments. There were beautiful moments with the Deleuze Monument. With the Deleuze Monument, the most beautiful moment was we could build it together with the residents, with 12, 15 people of the residence. We did it together. We built it together. So this was a very beautiful moment to get it together, to build it together. Mm-hmm. To have this experience for 3 weeks, because I was there for 3 weeks, to build it together with the neighbors, to build it. And this goes a little bit into too much details for the conference, not for the book, because Anna explained it. Because my first choice in Avignon was not the city. Can we go to this? Okay, here. Was not the city of Champfleury, but was another, just 50 meters away was another city, another housing project. And actually, it was not possible to do it there. And Anna explained it here in this book. So it was not possible because people didn't want my project there. So I met people from another cité called neighborhood or whatever, public housing in Champfleury. And they told me, Thomas, do it here with us. So this was, when you ask me about the first experience, the first, what I learned, that it's not me who decide actually where it is. It's perhaps the people who say, no, Thomas, look, they don't want, do it here with us. Because that's about it. It's not me who decide where it has to be, but it's perhaps somebody who said, do it here, we will help you. We will do it. So this is my first very important, but also, I mean, I was not prepared. I didn't thought it works like this. So I had to learn that it's not me, the artist, who decide where my monument actually will be, but it's perhaps the people surrounding there, listening to, seeing their interest to do it there, who tell me do it here. And that's why this was my first, when you ask me about, yes, beautiful moment, because somebody told me, do it here with us. That's why actually it's in Champfleury, who was not my first choice.
So that's the beautiful, intense moment, and the counterpart is, at what moments do you say, this has not worked?
I mean, as always, work in public space does not work. But that we need to be prepared for. It does not work. But it does not work doesn't mean it's not good, or it's not interesting, or it's not to do or to affirm. It's just to do. But Of course, what mean works? What mean it does not work? That means people don't get involved, people don't get interested by, people don't wanted it, or people are hostile or whatever. So, you know, I learned with my artwork in general, but especially with my artwork in public space, that failure and success and what works, what not works, what function, what not function is really very relative. And I have, as an artist, to resist to this kind of categorization of does it works? Because everybody asks you, does it work? Does it work? What means does it work? What means it? And here I would like, Anna, can you please show other pictures from 55, picture 55? You know, what means it? Does it work? Means it that people are coming? Means it that it's crowded? Means it that there are a lot of people there? Means this, it works? Means it that people are really hoping to attend it? Means this, does it work? That it function? Or can an artwork be something where it's empty chairs, it's not having a big crowd, you know, and it's insisting with the empty chairs? That's the question. And I made a lot of experience that I say, yes, there are a lot of empty chairs all the time. And I'm happy about the empty chairs, because the empty chairs, there's a part of the reality today when it's concerning art, when it's not concerning consumption, just art, not culture, of course, but just art. So, you know, the question of working, not working, or functioning or not functioning is very, very relative to me. And I learn it with art, with my work in public space. And I don't think that, and I hope you are clear enough also, when you see pictures with a crowd, yeah, okay, I hope and I trust you that you always think perhaps it's the same good when there is no crowd, the artwork. Because the only thing today, who can be perhaps good, perhaps, I only say perhaps good, is only also when there is no crowd, okay? When there is no attention, when there is no functioning. I don't know who else can stand this than art today. Not function, not working, empty chairs. This is very, very important. So I learned it with the Deleuze Monument, but I experience it every time since then.
Mm-hmm. But you haven't, since the Deleuze Monument, been in a situation where you had to dismantle a piece before the end of the exhibition?
No, that's not true, because I want to show you. Can I show you picture 02? 02. No, because what it's about? When you do an artwork in public space, this is something I made, it's called Timeline, or work in public space. I made this, and it's 65 works I did in public space. Not like the Deleuze Monument, much smaller. And I made it 2 years ago, before I made the Gramsci Monument, which is actually the 66th project I made in public space. So when you do work in public space, you learn, I think, as an artist, you learn that it's beautiful, it's nice to be in contact with what I call the non-exclusive audience. It's fun, it's risky, of course. You learn a lot. You are in contact with real judgments, not with evaluations. But sometimes you you don't expect it, you don't want it actually, like failures, like destructions, like intervention on your work who are not positive. And actually I show it because you can see all the red points. That's why I show you this. The small red points, not the red lines around, but the small red points shows in this public space pictures where I had to confront problems. Fire, destruction, blizzard, blizzard, wind, I don't know, unknown destruction, whatever, interventions. So until the end, until the 56th work, I know that when you do a work in public space, even in a gallery, but okay, we're speaking about, you have to confront the intervention from outside, from somebody, passerby, who, or somebody else, I don't know, a resident who is not agree and who intervenes violently against your work. That happens all the time. That happens all the time in my experience. That's why I made also this work timeline, 65 works in public space. Since the beginning, it happened, and it will always be like this. And this is what I think the difficult, the complexity, but also the dilemma sometimes to do it in public space, but also the beauty to do sometimes in public space, confronting people who, for a reason who goes away from art, are not agree with what you are doing. And you have to confront it very harshly, very directly, and that is what I think you speak about.
Yeah, and just to bounce off what you just said, one of the questions that my editors at Afterall had, they said, well, you don't talk at all about Thomas's work in galleries. And I realized this was a relationship that I really struggled to articulate, because generally I like your works more in public space than in galleries and museums, although there are some works in museums that I've enjoyed. And I've always felt that in terms of precariousness, in terms of taking risks, in terms of unpredictability, the work in public space is really where this really happens, whereas in a gallery or a museum, especially a commercial gallery, it's another set of issues. Can you help me understand this relationship?
No, I can help you.
No?
I can't
It's
because
hopeless.
No, it's hopeless. It's hopeless. Yeah, because it's hopeless. But you're not the only art historians who is afraid to go commercial galleries and to confront with other exhibitions in institutions, because you go there, not you, Anna, specifically, but the art historian, they go there with a schema in their head, and that's their problem. That's not my problem, because me as an artist, I want to give in every occasion, in a commercial gallery, in an institution, in the public space, but also in an alternative, I want to give my best, you understand? But I cannot sometimes, because I'm limited like everybody. But it's not a problem. But I'm not going there with a schema. The art historians, actually, to protect themselves, of course, they go there with a schema. That's their problem. That's not my problem. That's their problem. But by the way, I accept all kind of judgments coming from the art historian. But of course, it is something to do with it has something to do with the critique of institutions, you know, which I never had. I never critiqued an institution, because myself, you must know, and Anna don't know perhaps, myself, I loved art the first time in an institution, because in my family, art doesn't play any role. And I was very happy that some friends of me brought me to an institution to confront with art. And that's why I love art, because some friends brought me in an institution, and I learned that art can involve me, can concern me. And art historians often have a schema to not go into this. And I never went to critique of institutions because I think it's stupid. It's not about me, of course, but it's also not about the potentiality of institutions, because institutions have the potential to concern a non-exclusive public also today. And that's why I'm never going into this kind of critique of institution, of before, of some, for example, commercial gallery. I saw exhibitions in commercial gallery. They touched me very strongly, perhaps sometimes more than in institutions or in public space.
No, I write about artists who exhibit in commercial galleries. I go and visit that, and so that's not what I meant. What I meant is, would you agree that the set of issues that you develop in your work in public space is different from the one that you develop in institutions or in galleries? Or do you not see any difference between these works?
I don't see any difference. Of course, it is different because it's outside. For example, it's raining, so you have to build a shelter. Or, for example, it's not closed at 6 o'clock, so you have to take care what happened in the night. Or perhaps it is free, so people has not to pay, etc. So all elements who are outside in an institution or a private gallery are elements who I think interesting because they give a new challenge, a new opening, you have to challenge other problems, other questions, but they are not constitutive different. I'm sorry, I don't get the point. They're not constitutive different to my idea why I do art, where is my position, what do I think about art, and what do I want to express with using my tool of art. So, of course, that's for example, that's why I do work like Flamme Eternelle in the Palais de Tokyo in Paris this year in an institution, which I think it's an experience, an interesting experience, and very important experience to me, like the Deleuze Monument, the Gramsci Monument, but inside an institution. I don't make any differences.
To return to precariousness, would you say that works in public space are more precarious?
No. Can we go to the picture, please? To the picture for me, 50. Precariousness. Okay, about precariousness. You know, precariousness is not aesthetic. It's not an aesthetic. It's not an outcome. It's not an aesthetic. Precariousness is very important. It's a form. It's the form. But the form is not the aesthetic. Understand? The form. What means this? Precariousness, what I love in precarious, because our life is precarious. It's so precarious, so fragile, so difficult to live, and so beautiful, and so precious also. So I'm interested in the term of precariousness, very interested, because to me it's not a negative term. It's not a negative term. It's a term which I think challenge me to be awake, to be open every moment to what happened, to be the who is sensitive, to be the who kept what happened. Precariousness to me means also that everything, what I do, everything, I mean not me, but we do generally, is something precarious. Because the pyramids, 3,000 years ago, they made the pyramids in Egypt. They're not looking anymore like they were when they did it, okay? So means that's a precarious thing, still a precarious thing. Everything is precarious. I love terms like instability, uncertainty, nothing guaranteed, nothing for sure. what is more boring in our life when something is for sure, guaranteed, etc.? No, no. Take risks. Risk is fun. We know it. So precariousness is a term I want absolutely to see as a term to think about, to confront with me. To confront with me, my work, and whatever I think about. So precariousness is a term also I try in my work to work out. Why? Because I believe in the moments, in the precarious moments of an encounter. That's why it's so important when I do projects like after the Deleuze Monument, I admit, with presence and production, because only in these precarious moments, sometimes non-expected, you can really get something. Because there is a precariousness of the whole dispositif, but not about aesthetic, it's about the form of the whole thing. There is a precariousness of the understanding, you must be there at this moment, at this time, and then you have the chance to get it. And when not, it's not a problem either, because it belongs to this idea that precariousness is still something who we can be open as a human being today. Because I understand it. It's so difficult to live today, so everybody wants the thing guaranteed for every time, for the eternity. But I tell you, I know it. It's not what happened. We know it. So what I want to do with my love of precariousness, to say the precariousness is not the guarantee of eternity, but the guarantee is of precariousness that every day, every minute, every second, you have to rebuild the whole thing. And this gives the eternity, to rebuild it and to rebuild it and to do it again and again and again. That's why I'm so close to the term of precarity. And the last thing about precarity, let me tell you that there is a big difference because precarity and ephemerality, ephemer. Because there is an opposition between precarious and ephemeral. Precarious is the human being. He or she decides or suffers or whatever is dealing with precarity. She or he. Okay? But ephemerality is the law, the logic of nature. And I'm not interested in the logic of nature. I'm interested in the logic of the human being. And of course, for example, to come back, the Deleuze Monument was a very precarious monument, but not because its outcome, but just because it had to be constructed every day again.
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely one of the reasons I love your work, and this work in particular is to come back to what you were saying. It doesn't take its audience for granted. It doesn't take the role of art for granted, and I think it's very healthy, and I can say this speaking in an art school, because I also teach in an art school. It's very healthy not to take art for granted, and to keep that in, yes, to keep the question of the role of art open. Did you have any questions for me?
Yes, I have a question. So, how you get to write this book? How you get it, Anna?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, who asked you to write a book about, or who you proposed you, okay. How it arose to that you wrote this book?
Okay.
How it happened, really, concretely?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I love the series, and I've always wanted to write a book for this series. And so I met with one of the editors, Pablo Lafuente, and I said, these are the artists I'm writing about, I'm doing research on, I'm interested in. And he responded by saying, yes, we'd like something on him, but no, we're not interested in him, right? So that's how it worked. So this is how I went from, because I tend to write and research thematic topics. I hate monographs. So this is how I went from my thematic research to a more focused, was in that dialogue with Afterall saying, yes, we'd like to do a book on him, or we'd like to do a book on him. And then, once we decided that they were interested in a book on you, we tried to agree on which work it would be. And so they suggested what they were interested in, and I said, yes, I would be interested in that. So, for example, we were both interested in the monument, and they said, would you like to do the Bataille or the Deleuze? And I was much more interested in the Deleuze because of my missed encounter in Avignon, but also because I felt there was already some literature on the Bataille Monument, more developed. And so that's how we got to that. And then I had to pitch the idea. And so it's a very kind of Hollywood thing, you know, sell the idea. And they liked my idea, and that's how we moved on.
That might be a great moment to
yes.
to turn it to the say, Thomas, that we were interested in you for some time in joining the series of we initially thought of it as 100 books, but I don't know if it's going to be 100. It could be less, could be more. But we had in our minds for a long time that we wanted to include one of your works in that series, and it was just fortuitous that Anna got in touch with us and was actually interested in writing about you, and also writing about one of the works that we were interested in. So, precariousness, fortuity, I don't know. But I'd like to suggest that we, because of time, that we invite anyone from the audience who might wish to ask Thomas or Anna any questions. Mm-hmm. Is there a floating microphone anywhere? Okay, there's a floating microphone. If you could wait till the microphone gets to you. At the back.
Hi, Anna, Thomas. I'm Caroline. I'm one of the editors for Afterall. And what interested me, which hasn't been touched on so far in reading through the manuscript, was this idea of this sort of ethics of labour and the idea of the work of maintenance. And I wonder, Anna, if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on that, and perhaps Thomas too.
Yeah, I was very interested in that. It didn't occur to me right away, because from the beginning, when I was looking at precariousness, I was interested in works that don't take for granted their existence, dramatize their existence and their potential disappearance. So I was always the moment between appearance and disappearance that I'm interested in. And what I found with Thomas' work and the Deleuze Monument in particular, and in particular the early dismantlement of the monument really brought that to light, is that in order to and this is what Thomas was saying, you have to reconstruct the piece every day. In order to maintain this moment of existence, of precarious existence, you have to put a lot of effort and work and reinvent it, reconstruct it, maintain it, repair it. And then when I saw you at the Gramsci Monument in New York, and you were busy all day, talking to people and checking whether things were working, and just it was more like a maintenance, like a caretaker almost. That was one of your roles, was being a caretaker, and that really struck me as very interesting to realize that, especially for works in public space, it's not just a question of parachuting a piece in a public space and then leaving, but also being there, maintaining it, keeping it alive. And my reading was influenced by, in particular, the events of 2011, all the Occupy Wall Street movements and the Arab Spring, of people actually not only demonstrating and then going home, but actually staying in a place, finding ways of surviving and maintaining this daily existence over a long period of time. And that's why I felt there was a parallel between your work and this kind of mode of protest that has developed in the last few years. So I don't know if you want to add anything or...
No, I definitely, that's something we can learn, or I can learn from the Occupy thing, or that the presence of the body, the own body, against the representative system of democracy we are living in, is a form, already a form. The body, our own body, with the other, with the other, with the other, just the body. That's, I think it's very, and that's why, therefore, I'm not asking, yeah, but now you have to organize yourself, you have to make a charta, to write down your demands, and no, the body, just the body first. That's why, yes, after the Deleuze Monument, I learned I need to be there, not as the artist, but as a body concerned by my own work first. That's why I developed after the presence and production projects. My body, I give my body first. And of course, I hope somebody else will join the body also. That's the idea.
And it's not just the body, it's time. You know, in a sense, you commit your time and your effort and your work. And that, in a sense, encourages your collaborators to do the same. So I remember the Gramsci Monument when I talked to some of the people who work there, and they said, well, we will never be ready to work 7 days a week for 3 months without a break if Thomas wasn't doing the same thing. So in a sense, you encourage an engagement from your collaborators, but also the spectators and the visitors. And I felt like staying for a whole day in the Gramsci Monument because this was the kind of energy and the pulse and the rhythm that was there. And I think that today, to make generalization, but time is a commodity. I mean, what we do with our time, how we spend our time is really a political decision.
Hi, this is a question for Thomas. I've been to your exhibition, La Flamme Eternelle in Palais de Tokyo, many times. And what struck me was, apart from the precociousness that you used in your artwork, was the connectivity you had with the people that came, and it was a subject of connectivity right there, because when people entered the exhibition, they had to interact with it directly, and you added the printers, and people printed their things, and it felt like an like a forum in the internet, but live, like actual people were there. And I was thinking, were you aware of that? Because I read a bit of your critical laboratory book, and it seemed to me like you talked a lot about experience and the work on space, but you never actually talked about the subject of connectivity.
Yeah, Flamme Eternelle was definitely a big experience, an important experience to me. But, you know, to me, as the artist who was there all the time, the most important was, as you said, to be present and to give my body and to try in a, I hope, offensive, even aggressive gesture to invite the other also to give this time, her time, his time, and to be involved, to participate, or whatever we want to use as a word. So the idea is to create a space where the here and now still counts, to be there now at this moment. Not like in Facebook, in Twitter, in Instagram, etc., where it is virtual, where you can take care all different understandings of time and of comments of what happened. But no, really to be there for different reasons, for the reasons the people who come could decide themselves. For example, just to hang around, to drink a beer, not expensive, or to assist a lecture, or I don't know what. And this is the difficult, because, and I'm really agree with you, it's about time again, because we have no more time because there is a lot of information who wants us to tell you what is important to spend our time with. So the difficult to me was to create a space where you have yourself to decide how for you, spend your time the most you wanted it or think important or interesting or pleasurable for you. This was about Flamme Eternelle. So that's what I experienced with this work, Flamme Eternelle. And just to tell me, there is another element, because you speak about Flamme Eternelle, a new element coming, not presence production, not dedication, not output, but it is non-programmation. Because with all the events which I organized in Flamme Eternelle, who was not in a program, who was not announced at 4, at 6, at 8, something happened. So it was no programmation. There was another difficult moment to stand out, that something happened without that it is announced. And so this was about Flamme Eternelle. This was the core about Flamme Eternelle, actually. And I admit that perhaps only in a few moments you get these moments where you're really involved with it, but also you get it because there was no programmation, which I think could be the future. There is nothing programmed, because programmation is again the consumption. Even when it's culture, it's the consumption of culture. So that's what I try to do with Flamme Eternelle.
I think that was one of the most interesting elements as well for me, so that you are running the risk that some great philosopher is going to come for a lecture, but there will be nobody there. And as a visitor, you come and you have no idea what talk you're going to hear. So it is kind of countering the spectacularization of academia that has become, people flocking to hear the big philosopher. And there you ended up having some excellent speakers where there was nobody, and people who were not well known, where there were a lot of people, and I thought that was very interesting.
Thomas, the thing about precariousness is, fantastic, the idea of temporality, and it's there and then it's gone. What I'm interested in, and I wonder if it's a bit paradoxical on your part, is I know that it's very important for you to make publications about the precariousness. So it's making something permanent about something that was temporary. And I find that odd.
I mean, permanent, it would be nice when it's permanent.
Permanent-ish.
Yeah, I understand. It would be nice when it's permanent, but it's only a paper and, photocopies or something like this. But what I wanted is to make a testimony about these moments. Because, yes, what is important in precariousness is these moments where I am awake, where I am able to meet the other, where I'm able to get things. Not because I know it since before, but because just I was there and I was awake to get it. So, of course, I wanted, in a way, to give a testimony on this difficulty. Also, I agree, this complexity, and also perhaps this contradictory thing. Because to me, it has an importance. Precariousness, it has, because today precarious has a so harsh time because we don't want it. We don't, every politician works against it. It's like a bad word, because everybody. So I just want to say, no, perhaps we have to think it. And to think it and to put it again in the discussion. And that's why also I'm agree. Yes, I do a publication about the Gramsci Monument. I'm really happy there is 14 years ago, after a publication about the Deleuze Monument, who length 6 weeks in Avignon. I'm very happy about it. And it shows also that something happened very precarious, very discursive, failure or a success, whatever. 14 years ago, get a book. So I'm interested that this idea, the precarious, where you have to be awake, there this can be important for you, for somebody. It can be important. That's why I think it is legitimate in a way to insist with this. That's why, yes, I do, and I do, and what I did, publication about. That's why this is not the first book, it's the second book, because the first I did with my precarious tools, photocopies in my studio.
I think, I mean, this goes in the direction of my general research on dematerialization, is that, in a sense, the artwork never disappears. It never dematerializes. It just takes different forms. And in a sense, what interests me in the Deleuze Monument is that it exists somewhere in between the book and the reality and people's memories and the stories that are being told. And it's that kind of diffuse, disseminated, and maybe diluted existence that I think is very interesting, and it can help us think about the status of the artwork, which, as I argue, never dematerialized, as some might have said.
Yeah, and then I can add here, I think, just an addition, that after all, to come back to Marx mention, it's about Deleuze. You know, because it's a monument about somebody, it's about Deleuze. So his idea are in question, actually. And therefore, I mean, I made the Deleuze Monument, you know, for his idea, for the love I have for his idea. For example, 1,000 Plateaus, this beautiful book, so important book to me as an artist, you know, 1,000 Plateaus. So that's where it is important, and that's why I think art can also do his contribution. Yes, we hear you.
Yes, I'll shout then. Oh, it's working now. Yes, so it's a question about precariousness and possibly the word precarity. It's kind of linked, I guess, and probably more than is being omitted today. The question is really, with this, you know, the word precarity has been quite exhaustively theorized, especially in kind of contemporary, certainly in the UK, kind of economic precarity. And it seems to me that these kinds of monuments, especially this one outside, you know, outside the city in what you've called the kind of non-exclusive area, could talk to this idea of economic precarity quite successfully. But only if you're able to distinguish this kind of love of precariousness, which you have talked about, from this kind of idea of precarity. Because precisely without doing that, you just kind of don't admit to the kind of artistic privilege that your project might have within that particular region. So I wanted to kind of ask a kind of difficult question about that kind of idea of precarity. Thank you.
So just in my usage, I use precarity to relate specifically to social political debates about the status of the worker. So a precarious worker is somebody who is unemployed or only employed part-time or with short-term contracts. And precariousness is a more general condition. And the kind of theorization of precariousness in the last few years has really tended to kind of theorize both together and the kind of fundamental connection. So what I found interesting, and I'll just say this before I let Thomas answer, is that the struggle of precarious workers at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the year 2000 was started by using precarity as a negative term and saying, we are against precarity, give us full-time permanent jobs. And then there was a kind of a shift in the discourse of precarious workers themselves, using precariousness as a positive term and saying, we are precarious workers, and maybe we can even talk of a precariat, so a kind of class of precarious workers. And so I was quite interesting to see that Thomas's work, as well as other artists, was kind of accompanied this shift of starting with precarity as a negative term and actually turning it around and turning it into an affirmative term, proclaiming an identity to be defined and to be explored as a group. But that's my position on these terms. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, I just want to, yeah, nice how you described it, and you are right. I never said it's a positive term, but I said it's not negative. You know, I don't want to go into this negativity on it. I don't want to turn it in a positive term. Just say it has to be a term, for example, like today, in our reality, can help us to stand out, for example, to not be disappointed with reality. Because that's I learned with work in public space, to not be disappointed by its reality. What means it to not be disappointed? It means not to think reality should be in a moral way like this or like this. That's just to confront it like it is. And that's why I think precarity and precariousness can help us. It's a tool to get that these things are very precarious, and we have to be, or I as an actor or somebody, volunteer inside to confront this reality. I have to agree with everything what comes from this reality, and not seeing actually very quickly as something negative or positive, but just as something as done. So not to be disappointed by reality, it helps me, because to me it's close to the term of precariousness.
And just to bounce back on the theorization of precariousness, which in the last few years, whether Judith Butler or Lauren Berlin, is they all acknowledge, and as we do, that there is a difference between an unemployed resident of a cité HLM and Hirschhorn, who got funding to do his project. You know, so there is, obviously, you acknowledge the difference and the distinctions in the status and the everyday life, but that does not prevent you from forging a temporary alliance and a temporary dialogue and acknowledging a precariousness that we could be said to be sharing. So it's not about erasing differences as much as trying to find the relationships.
We have one last question.
This one.
Hello. I'm not entirely sure how to form this question, but seeing as failure and success is up there on the board, in terms of talking about failure and successes of works, which you have suggested aren't necessarily necessary, when kind of thinking about artwork in general, if we're not going to talk about failure and success, what were the responses from the Cité residents to your Deleuze Monument and perhaps other monuments that you've done in public spaces? What were the general responses of the locals?
I mean, I can't speak for them, but I think definitely is to make an experience. I think we made an experience, not only a positive, not only a negative, but together we made an experience, an experience. And as all experiences, they have something I think they have inside the potential to make something transform. So, but I cannot speak for the residents. To me, it transformed to me as an artist who made the Deleuze Monument, it transformed how, from the experience of the Deleuze Monument, I have now to work from this moment. That's why I invented then the presence and production project, for example. But I cannot speak for the residents. I hope, and I am sure, in a way, because when not, I don't do my work. They have other experiences. They transform them, perhaps in a very modest way, of course, very particular way, but I cannot speak for them.
I mean, I made the deliberate choice, not to go and interview the participants. So the reactions that you mentioned, I gleaned from the film that Coralie Suard made, where she did interview the participants, and from the reviews, where a lot of journalists met kids and worked, and some of your collaborators, and kind of report back what they said, but with a bias, obviously, because there always is. And I think I made this decision because of this, yes, of not wanting to quantify results, in a sense. And I think Claire Bishop also tackled this problem, these difficulties, when she wrote about your Spinoza festival. And she did interview the collaborators and the residents to find out what their experience was. So in a sense, there are different approaches to this question, and I think Claire went and did that because her students always asked her, and what did the residents think about the project? So she felt the need to really tackle this question head on. But so my approach, I think, is close to what I was saying a little bit earlier, that for me the work exists in this indeterminate space between memories, experience, the artist's experience, the resident's experience, the visitor's experience. And in a sense, that's why I didn't want to go down the kind of journalist, let's try piecing all the evidence together and reconstructing something that I missed. I wanted to make my missed encounter a kind of central part of the book. So yes, the question will remain open.
Thank you very much, both of you, for coming on this evening. It's been fascinating, and certainly I think that this... I just wanted to add what I thought was fascinating about the monument and what you brought up very, very succinctly in your book, Anna. Sorry, this thing is very small but very powerful. Was the way Thomas's work really draws our attention to this kind of repressed element of the work of art, which is the relationship it has to these witnesses that you just spoke about, these people, these other people that are from the banlieue or from the working class, if you were to use that term, historical term. The way in which the modern museum of the Louvre is constructed to protect works of art from the proletariat, during the revolution, to put them somewhere safe. The way a place like the Whitechapel Art Gallery here in London was, conversely, was built in order to bring art to the poor, in order to educate them, to tame them, to make them more acceptable. So I think that the monuments, what comes out in the book and what comes out in the discussion today is that the monuments really allowed this kind of repressed history to kind of resonate and to be active. And whether or not the witnesses who were there would be any more reliable than the art historians who go in with their schema is up for debate. But I think it's a fascinating project. I think the Gramsci project I didn't see, but I can join Anna and say it was fascinating, everything I've read about it. I want to thank you very much, Thomas, for coming along. Thank you very much, Anna. And thank you, audience, for attending. Thank you.